Hi, I'm back. I don't know if you even know that I was gone. I missed the first part of a couple weeks of Libra for a couple different reasons, but one is because of this la Libran beauty. One of the biggest gifts of Libra season is the changing of the leaves, the changing of the weather, the turn towards the dark of winter in the northern hemisphere. But I think one of the things is that I get really caught up this time of year. I realize really trying to literally suck every moment out of being outside that I can. So today you are with me. So I just want to catch up a little bit on the first few weeks of Libra, and most importantly, what just happened this past weekend. I'm making this on October 12th, and this past weekend, Pluto turned direct after spending 4.5 months since April 30th and going in retrograde. We also had the full moon in Aries on October 9th, and that was at 16 degrees of Libra and Aries for those of you who know your chart and know your degrees. And then on October 10th, on Monday, Mercury went back into Libra for the second time after having spent most of September in retrograde. I don't know how that was for you. It was a little tricky for me. I would say it was one of the harder ones actually that I've been through. So I'm hoping that I'm still working on the lessons of what that meant, and I'm kind of hoping that the energy that we talk about going forward in this video will maybe help us discern the nervous system that was so activated during all that Virgo energy. So one of the things you might have noticed from the weekend, well, be with Pluto going direct, which rules our power, with the full moon in Aries, which rules our courage and confidence in how we use our power, and how power uses us. I've talked about this before, but I often think with Pluto and Mars, which is Aries energy, we're looking at where are we overpowered, where are we underpowered, where are we right in the sweet spot of holding our empowered, where are we feeling empowered. Those are big things that we're looking at this time of year. And so I really love to really contemplate that as we come out of that full moon. The full moon was also working with Chiron. So that had a lot to do with our identity. So we could look at our identity of how we allow ourselves to be overpowered, or where we overpower others, or where we underpower, or where we, what dynamics and relationships. This was a very relational full moon. So it's like, what relationship were we having those power dynamics back and forth? And what did that mean? So just, some things to play with as you're going forward. The sun is trining Saturn this week, and Mars is squaring Neptune. Those are some big themes for the week. Let me go ahead and pull up the chart. So here's the chart for the full moon. The other thing that was super interesting is that, and that's running all this week, is we have this what we call a grand trine in air. And so if we think about the theme of the week, we have a lot of air, the air element being what I just talked about, relational, communicative, mental. So how we think. So those are the three top things that we'll think about with with this grand trine in air this week. So how are my relationships? Did anything blow up this weekend from that kind of fiery full moon? Or did something shift and change? How am I communicating? How am I sharing what is actually happening up here and coming out my mouth? This is something I've discussed a lot. This Mercury is opposite Jupiter now. If we move forward a few days, I think it's just today, actually. No, yesterday. Mercury went opposite Jupiter, exact degree again for the third and final time. And when I've talked about this in the past, this is a great time. This is the third and final time. So when that happens, like looking at what is our stories? What's our storyline? um like what story are we telling in our head that we either have kept up there and it's done a really good job of creating a huge story that may or may not be true, which is what we'll talk about a little bit more with forward going energy. But like really looking at this would have first happened in early September. And so, what was the storyline of that month? And to really check in on Jupiter makes everything bigger. So, if our mental body is thinking about something, it can make everything bigger. So, is it making an idea bigger? Is it making a relationship bigger? Is it making a story that is or isn't true bigger? And that's the thing I just always caution people to check in on. Like, I've had to do a couple walkbacks with people being like, I'm thinking that this is what's going on in my head, and I'm wondering if this is true. And I've been wrong every time, like thinking that I had wronged somebody or I had said something or I had offended somebody or something like that. And they ended up being like, this has absolutely nothing to do with you, which is so egoic of me. So, anyway, just to really, be able make sure that you're checking in on your stories and what's going on in this really strong mentally activated brain is really true for you, and that communication and relational is all really strong for you. Great time to be bringing ideas forward with this Mercury retrograde being forward, now being direct again in Libra. There's a creative component to it, bringing in all the colors and the environment. It's a great time to be thinking about how your environment and your aesthetic, how that affects and helps how you work, how you live, and how you like where you like to do interact with others. It can be very distracting for Libras when there's something out of sorts or something out of place. It can be hard for them to focus because it's hard for Mercury and Libra to focus anyway. I'm a Mercury and air also, so I get it. But that ability to focus is really strong here. So creative, Mercury in Libra is really diplomatic, graceful, is finding ways to say things potentially that are not easy, but is finding a graceful, tactful, diplomatic way to say things, and to bring things more into harmony and balance, both within our minds and within our mouth, and what comes out communicatively, both emails as well as what comes out of our mouth, and then also relationally. How are we communicating relationally? And how are we sharing all of that? Really important, because probably one of the bigger things that's happening, that also started exact degree yesterday, is Mars right here down in Gemini. Here we go, Mars at 23 Gemini is an exact square to Neptune in Pisces over here. So this is an exact square. This energy is really interesting for a couple of reasons. One is they are going to be within a 3-degree orb of each other for the next 6 weeks, because Mars, our friend Mars, is going retrograde. So what is some of the, whenever there's a square, this is 90 degrees between the energy of Gemini and Pisces, whenever there's a square, it does create some conflict. They rub up against each other. And so this is important to think about where something is rubbing up against each other. There's lots of information around Mars and Neptune. So what are some of the things I would say about it? Well, first I want to say Mars squared Neptune exact degree yesterday. It will square again, exact degree on November 19th, and then exact degree again on March 14th. But in the meanwhile, just to know that now through literally the end of November, almost the end of November, like Thanksgiving, these two will be in orb of each other and really playing off each other. So 6 weeks worth of energy is something worth talking about. At its best, Neptune is that dreamy, intuitive, creative, spiritual side of us. What I always like to think of as our vertical plane, like how I connect to this beautiful earth, and then how I connect to my angels, my guides, God, whatever it is that you say. What is this connection that runs literally like along our spine and our nervous system within our body? And what is it trying to tell us? Mars is that forward energy, that go energy. This is that courage and confidence to take that dream and bring it out on the horizontal. So what I like to really like as a visual, what I would say is this is a horizontal versus vertical kind of situation, because Mars really likes to go and act, and Neptune can get a little blurry and fuzzy and dreamy and go through some emotional things. So Mars is beginning to slow down because it's going retrograde the end of October. And so it is starting to feel potentially a little bit more flustered, a little bit more frustrated because it's being restricted to some extent. Square Neptune, it will could start to come out in some passive aggressive kind of ways, because it's starting to lose some of its like its verve, its momentum, it's like get up and go kind of, because it's being slowed down by the energies of the sky. So while it's squaring Neptune, one of the high sides of it, I would say, is like, let's really get an opportunity to check in with your vertical. What is your body saying? What is your intuition saying? What is your creative side craving? Um, and then be able to act from that. So if you're noticing, and so that's going to be the rest of October. If you're and Mars will go retrograde, I think on sometime on the 30th or into the 31st. These next 3 weeks, like if you're starting something and you're doing something, you're going to get a chance to review what that was. Or if you say something or something like that, you're going to get a chance to review that when you go into this Mars retrograde. Um, Mars is very physical and Neptune is very metaphysical. Um, so how do we take this metaphysical energy and create something physically? One of the things we did the other night in my in a full moon ritual that we had at my house with about 17 people was we created altars. And so it's a very metaphysical thing where we got to create, we had all these different things to pull from, that we got to create our own altar. And then we had the physical thing at the end where we lit the candle and we were able to really have that metaphysical meet the physical, that physical object of really being able to manifest or let go of, or whatever it is that we were using to represent that altar. So that was a really interesting way of doing things. The other thing I like to think about with this metaphysical and physical is this ability to walk our talk. Um, the ability to be able to really intuit, like Neptune always has to deal with boundaries, and Mars is very good at boundaries. Mars actually rules war, fighting, the military, that kind of thing. So it actually is very good at figuring out what the boundaries are. But Neptune is not very good at boundaries. So this could be a time where we're figuring out, like, where have we abandoned a boundary that was really important to us? Where have we, or strengthening or marshaling our forces to be able to figure out, like, this is really what's true for me and this isn't, following along on this all this air energy that we have that is helping us really being able to communicate, and this energy for the rest of Libra season to be able to communicate what it is that's true for us. um I think some of the things that we have to be careful of, and these can go both ways with Mars square Neptune. So again, this is a 6-week transit that will hit a few different times, and then we'll see again in March. So we have to be really careful. This is a time, Mars square Neptune is a time where you have to look at deception. You have to look at, where am I deceiving myself? Where am I deceiving others? Where am I being deceived? It's like this little Bermuda Triangle here of like this deception. And what does that mean for me? And just to really watch. This is a time where I say this often with Neptune transits. This is a time where scammers come out and try to sell you something or do something, or there's so much hacking that goes on with this energy. So being able to use that Mars energy to really stand for what's true for you and to be like, no, I'm not, no, or to fight a charge, or to go back and redo something where you may have been deceived. Neptune was in play a lot in September as well. So if there was a deception that happened then, like you saw something on the internet and you bought it and then you received it and it was like not anything near like what you saw the product was in the pictures. Being able to go fight for your money back or something like that is a really interesting thing. Um, this can be a very creative energy. This could be a creative flow. Gemini's, again, all about the word, and Neptune is all about that dream and creative video and photography and scenic kind of background. Like, for instance, this is some kind of Neptune energy, and then being able to use those words, being able to move forward with that. So that Gemini Pisces energy, one way to use that. Again, very intuitive energy, because both air and water, Gemini and Pisces, are able to um, like receive that more intuitively and through feeling, versus being able to collect the data necessarily of knowing, although Mars and Gemini can collect that data to back it up. This is a funny energy of like, can I surrender while also taking action? Wait, what? Can I surrender into what is being shown to me and then take action from that, instead of forcing? Mars likes to force. So Neptune's asking us to surrender to what is right in front of us and then take the action. And that's not an easy place for these two to get along because Mars just wants to push and bulldoze through. And Neptune is more of a receptive energy. So like receiving the energy first and then using that energy to assert your will. This can also be a time of coming to the defense of those in need. So this is a great example of compassionate action. Um, so just making sure that again you're keeping your boundaries of whatever that is, of being able to be compassionate and being able to help others who are in need, and also making sure that you're not, first of all, doing more than they want, and second of all, that it's that too much is being given, and that you're in depletion. You end up in depletion. This can be a Mars square Neptune is depletion. It can also, Mars square Neptune can also rule infection. So it's an interesting time to think about getting sick. Always is this time of year anyway, right? As the seasons change and we get colds and sore throats and all those kinds of things, just to really watch that and not to and to watch your energy as you go through this, because your energy can get lower. Um, this can lower your energy level, and again, that pushing piece. Do we push through it, or do we say, you know what, I don't feel all that great, so I'm really just going to take it easy? Not an easy thing for many people. So I think this is a really interesting thing to watch for. So this continues on throughout this whole week through October 17th. You can see, like, even into the weekend, we're still carrying this beautiful blue trine where all these planets, the sun and Venus up in Libra, are trining Mars in Gemini and Saturn in Aquarius. So a lot of air energies really still prevalent this month, all the way into as we carry into Scorpio season. So there's some good energy whenever, like, the sun, remember, whenever Saturn's in play, it can, with especially with the sun and Venus, and Mars, this can also, and it's in a trine aspect, is to how it has supportive energy for structuring something, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's quick, which again Mars gets pissed off about. So just to really watch how that works. But as we come into this weekend, we come into an exact 24-degree trine between Mars and the sun. So this beautiful blue line, and Venus, beautiful blue line, that really gives us that energy of, okay, we are going to move something forward, because like I said, we're going to get a chance during Mars retrograde from October 31st into January 12th, to really review something. So if you've taken some action or you decide to take some action, it's all good timing, because we're going to get to play with it a little bit more. At the same time, we have Venus trine Mars. Again, the continuation of the theme of that relational energy, checking in on your relational energy, whether it's an intimate, whether it's a business partner. I was just listening to someone tell me a story about how they had some business partners had some contractual issues, and they're not very happily working through some of the contract issues. And so, being able to work with that energy and be able to know that there is tact and graceful and diplomacy here, while not losing boundaries, would be the big theme for the rest of Libra into the 23rd of the month. What else do I want to say? Mercury is moving its way along in Libra. It is coming to the culmination of what we learned during the retrograde period. So what was that for you? There was, an example I will give is, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm the eldest of my siblings, and I have kind of always taken the lead in things. I've always, taken the role of like the leader and like, let's do this and do that and organizing things and all that. And I started to recognize in September that that's no longer needed. My kids are in their 20s. My husband's doing his thing, so that's our relationship. Um, and my extended family is doing their thing. And so I've been pulling back into this, like, well, what is my story of who am I? What is my identity when I'm not taking the lead in something with a family situation? So it's just, that was something that, one of the themes that came up during September. And, there was a grieving process around like the mourning of that. As much as I want everyone to launch and be able to do everything there, I'm like, well, who am I without that? So just an interesting example of how that goes. But that's, whatever your theme is that has been in play during that whole Mercury retrograde season, which again, went into its shadow period, and retrograde on the 9th of September. Let's just say it's been in play for the better part of 6 to 7 weeks, since the end of August. And so, is there something, a repetitive theme that came up for you? Something to consider. Um, as we finish Libra season, I think one of the things that is a little bit tricky, and I live with this all the time, so I can speak to it pretty helpfully, is this Sun and Venus end up squaring Pluto. So this is a square energy. So again, we started this video talking about Pluto ruling power. And when it squares both Venus and the Sun, we're again talking about our relational power. And when the Sun squares Pluto, we're often talking about our internal power. So we're talking about like our confidence, our courage, where we sabotage ourselves, where we let power be taken, where we leak power, if that makes sense to you, where like we give power away. Oh, okay, you make the decision, when we really know what we want. This is some energy that comes in. It'll be in play actually. Let's see here. It really starts towards the end of this week. I would say as early as, Thursday, Friday, the 13th and 14th, and will carry through for the following week, all the way until the sun goes into Scorpio. So we'll have this energy that will also be underlying under there of like, again, like I started at the beginning of the video, go back and be like, where am I leaking my power? Where am I feeling empowered? And doing that check in. And what needs to be adjusted, because we have this Mars action energy, is what needs to be adjusted, and what action do I need to take to feel more empowered in this relational dynamic, in this creative dynamic, in this environmental dynamic, any of those things. So just really kind of taking a look at that. Sun square Pluto can really, if this comes up for you, where you really start to feel not good enough, it can be that kind of energy. And just to really examine, is that true for me? And if it is feeling true for me right now, why? Why am I not feeling good enough? What is it that's happening in my life that where I feel out of control, or I feel disempowered or underpowered? And if that doesn't come up for you, great. But it is something that can sometimes like turn inward. And so just notice that if that starts to happen, and question it, because sometimes it happens and you're like, no, I feel fine. Everything's great. You're just telling me a story up there, you crazy brain. But just really check in on that for yourself. Um, and in this, there's a lot of cardinal energy. October is bookended by Mercury retrograde ending and then Mars retrograde beginning. So there's literally about a 4-week window in here where um, some of the outer planets are turning direct, as well as the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, are not retrograde. And so there could be a lot of action. So there's cardinal energy is initiating energy. So if there's something initiated, again, like it's a good time to be able to be looking at some old versus new patterns, some old versus new. One example I gave the other night is I'm looking at getting a knee replacement. So I'm looking at getting rid of my old knee that's all worn out and getting a new bionic knee. It's just one example of how we look at that. So it's like those, like what is old and what is new, what needs to stay and what needs to go. So there's some really interesting components of that, and some action go energy with this month. Always with hiccups. There's always hiccups, but like I said, we're going to get a chance to review this. So it's just going to be a part of what we're looking at. And I think the last thing I want to say with this, which is in play with Mars, this Mars square Neptune again, with Sun square Pluto and Venus square Pluto, the emotional body, you could feel some swings of the emotional body. Mars and Neptune bring in some energy of it can bring you to, like, I want to say the words that I sometimes feel are despair or hopelessness. I told my husband that yesterday, I'm like, I just had all the lesses. I feel hopeless. I feel aimless. I feel wanderless. Like all the words with less. That's how I felt yesterday. And so just really examining that for yourself, and then determining, okay, what do I need? What does my little self-care regimen need? Oftentimes it's water. I took a beautiful bath last night with Epsom salts. I released a lot of stuff. I put in all these yummy essential oils and I slept really well and woke up today and was able to do a video. So I think, just really like, what are my tools when I start to feel more on my heels than on my toes? Something to really witness for the rest of this month, which is about another 11 days in Libra. And so that's the overall theme of things that are happening. And I hope this was helpful. I hope the beauty of fall is gorgeous where you are and you're getting a chance to enjoy that. It does turn very quickly. The wind was blowing last night and I was like, no, I want to go super glue all the leaves back on the trees. But I also know that change is inevitable. So I leave you with a word that I will try to bring back again. Change is inevitable as we witness all these leaves lying on the ground, but reimagining, let's just think about it from a tree perspective. Like all the leaves are going to fall off this tree. And if I could spend these dark winter months thinking, reimagining what that tree is going to look like when it comes back around in the spring, that can be hopeful versus the hopeless of like, oh no, fall's ending, snow's coming for 6 months. um, so just think about that. So I leave you with the word reimagine. What in your life do you want to reimagine, or do you feel like it's time to reimagine? It's a good timing. All right, everybody, take care. See you in Scorpio.